My job and my service to the film was to try to create a realistic, engaging, emotional journey. And to me, the whole film, as complicated as it is condensed down to one thing, and that's a man trying to find his way home. It was imperative that we went to all these different locations around the world to give the audience a full sort of spectrum of the infinite possibility of the dream world. And it was a pleasure to do, and it was a fantastic ride for all of us. I had to be essentially the leader of this group, and although we were attempting to do something entirely unique, which is the idea of incepting an idea in someone's mind instead of extracting information, which is what we traditionally have done within this black market criminal world, we were trying something essentially new. So all the characters in this film were learning about this world for the first time, and I think that's what makes it engaging for an audience. Is you're with them. You're with them, and understanding the danger of what is to come.
Well, one of the things I love about Chris Nolan's movies is that even though they're, these huge scale Hollywood blockbuster action movies, he always makes room and prioritizes the acting and the character and honesty. And I think that's what sets his movies apart, that they don't, because no matter how cool the spectacle is, if you don't feel something for the people that are in the middle of it, you can only really care about it so much. Don't we all sort of, when we're playing pretend, like dream of flying around and fighting the bad guys? Like, that's what I got to do, and got to do it for real, because it's not in front of a green screen. Like most movies nowadays, big Hollywood movies, if they want to do a special effects thing, they do it in front of a green screen and it all happens digitally later. That's not how Chris made these sequences. He did it for real, whether it's building a set that spins 360 or taking the set and turning it on its side and hanging wires down and shooting it from below. And he came up with all sorts of different techniques to do it for real. Because I still think that as amazing as some of the digital effects have become, there's still nothing that can trick the eye into believing it's real unless you actually show the audience something that is real.
It was challenging because I ask a lot of questions, and a lot of my dialogue ends with question marks, which is great. But in order to, and of course, yes, it is, just as Chris has said, is a way of helping the audience keep up and allowing them to understand what's going on. Here you have a young woman who's clearly a successful student in Paris, studying architecture. And to me, she would just have an innate intellectual curiosity, and I'd like to think most people would be if they got introduced to this concept. And I think she just wants to ask every and all questions that she could think of.
To have actual moving parts and large sort of like special effects which are live, as it were, like the train that we had barreling down 6th Street in downtown. It was downtown anyway. That was really there, and we had a big old freight train smashing through cars, and then he turned the waterworks on, so the entire road was drenched in tropical rain, and then smashed loads of cars up and fired lots of guns and sent people out. It was pretty real. Certainly I felt like I was clinging on for dear life in the back of that car for real, at times. They had one of those extreme skiers, or a couple of them actually, doing some pretty hairy stuff up on the mountains. These freestyle extreme sports skiers doing some pretty gnarly stuff, and then they would insert on dear old me and hanging onto the back of a bit of scaffolding stuck to the back of a skidoo, doing close-up stuff. So it was, we did have to learn to ski, and I'm a terrible skier, but I can ski a bit now. Enjoyed it, but not enough to portray what these extreme skiers do.
It's a really tough situation all the time. There's a different weather, different temperature, hot and cold, so cold in Canada. And then we try to adjust the situation to, send the different situation from Chris. And but fortunately, we didn't need too much adjustment because that is a situation, real situation, and the whole thing is just Chris all the time to build up the set with earthquake, flood, and no gravity, zero gravity, and we tried just experience, and just easy for acting.
It makes you experience it again there in the moment as the character would. Whereas I guess if stuff is dropped in afterwards, you're not reacting honestly. Well, you are as honestly as you can. But I remember myself and Leo did this scene, and they had this in this bar where the whole bar like tilted. I don't know how many degrees that is, but it's quite a significant amount. And we had to, stay in the scene because we're not meant to react. Because he isn't, certainly because he knows that we're dreaming. So that was amazing, and you could see all the bottles and all the liquid in the glass was going like that, and he built this whole set. I don't know how much that cost, but I'm sure he could have done that in CGI, but to actually experience it viscerally there as performers, I'm sure added to the scene. You experience the weather and the environment as the characters would. So again, it brings truth to the performance, hopefully. And we're up the top of a mountain in Calgary, and it literally could not see your hand that far in front of your face. Yeah. But Chris kept on shooting, and so there's a great truth to that, to the whole setup.
I lived with Mr. Zimmer music for a long time. I think he's a genius, and I think that what he did with this movie is what this movie is. A mix of action, science fiction, and deep emotion.
I've been interested in dreams my whole life, really, and in the process of dreaming. In coming to write Inception, I didn't do a lot of research. I did very much what I did when I wrote the script for Memento, which is about memory and the loss of short-term memory. The way I wrote that script was, rather than research, was really to try and analyze my own process of memory and create a very subjective experience for the audience that way. With Inception, I've tried to do the same thing for dreaming, really, and the experience of dreaming. That is to say, rather than researching it and looking at all the science of it, to really just explore my own process of dreaming, how that works, the idea of lucid dreaming, those dreams where you sometimes become aware of the fact that you're dreaming and can try and control or manipulate your own dream or the world of that dream. Really, Inception is based on those kind of explorations, those kind of very subjective explorations. Underlying the idea of Inception is the notion that dreams feel real while we're in them. And so shooting on location, to me, has always been the best way of getting a feeling of reality, a sense of reality to these dreams. We traveled to 6 different countries, 4 continents, to really get a lot of different looks and feels into the film and achieve scale and scope for Inception that way. I think location work is by far the best way of putting everybody into the world of the film and really allowing people to invest in the film we're making more than just shooting on a green screen stage or a set that's been built on a sound stage. The great thing about Blu-ray for me is because of the image quality, when a lot of attention's gone into the visual side of the film, as it has on Inception, my director of photography, Wally Pfister, Paul Franklin, the visual effects supervisor, Guy Dias, the designer, these people, they've put an enormous amount of attention to detail and to visual detail in the frame, and it's an important aspect of the film and the world of the film, the immersive world of the film. I think Blu-ray is the highest quality home video format there's ever been, and so it really gets you as close to the theatrical experience in the home as possible. And for a film like Inception that really tries to throw you into a world that you can become lost in, I think the technical quality of the presentation is extremely important.